People that live there truly think of their lives as before drones and after drones. Just as we talk about before 9/11 and after 9/11, everything changed. This is how they think of their lives, is in two different time frames. Their lives are completely different now. The drones are present 24/7. The children are afraid to go to school, so they're raising a whole generation of children who are uneducated. Families, some families who can afford to, are sending their children off to live with extended family in all parts of Pakistan, so they're not being raised with the tribal culture, the Pashtun culture. Depression, people are taking Xanax. People are going into the cities to get antidepressants. One of the waziris that spoke with us said that 17 people in his village have committed suicide. This is unheard of in the Pashtun culture, to commit suicide, but there's so much mental stress and emotional torture, psychological torture from these drones, it's causing people to kill themselves. This is a map of Pakistan, and on the left is how Pakistan sits. You can see where it sits in between Afghanistan and India. And then on the right-hand side, the darker orange area in the middle is what's called the federally administered tribal areas. And the bottom two sectors there are North and South Waziristan, and that is where almost all of the drone strikes are happening. Now, the Pashtun people live in an area that crosses both Afghanistan and Pakistan, and they've lived there for hundreds and hundreds of years, long before the country was, arbitrarily divided into two parts. So the Pashtun people don't really recognize this border. They have family on both sides, and they are resentful that there are checkpoints and then they can't cross over and visit people on the other side of the border. I was lucky enough to be part of a Code Pink delegation. Code Pink's a wonderful anti-war organization. There were 31 of us, 30 Americans and 1 Canadian, mostly women. We ranged in age from 22 to 83. And this is a picture of us at the office of the Foundation for Fundamental Rights. The Foundation for Fundamental Rights, FFR, is headed by a man named Shahzad Akbar, and this is a picture of Shahzad. He is a lawyer, a Pakistani lawyer, and he advocates on behalf of the drone victims. The people in Waziristan who are being affected by the drones really don't have anyone looking out for them. The Pakistani government doesn't compensate the people who are victims of the drone strikes. They just sort of ignore that these are happening, and they are really under a lot of pressure. The Pakistani government's under a lot of pressure from the United States to keep the truth hidden about who is being harmed by these drones. So I was part of what we call the pre-delegation. The main body of the delegation arrived at a certain time frame, but I was part of a small group that came ahead of that time, and we were kind of led by Ann Wright. This is a picture of Ann, and I know a lot of you know who she is. She's a retired diplomat and retired Army colonel who resigned her position with the State Department in protest of the imminent invasion of Iraq. And so she was kind of our leader for the few days before the main delegation showed up. And this is a picture of her speaking at the National Defense University in Islamabad. And we were just wall-to-wall media, interviews and speaking engagements and roundtables with different academic groups, civic groups. And we were very well received. People really wanted to hear from us, were very grateful and showed so much appreciation that we came from the United States to protest against our government's policies. They said, you've made us feel like we can stand up against our government, that you, especially these women and some elderly women coming, and it really kind of inspired them, and it was really exciting to be a part of that. Now, just before we left for the trip to Pakistan, a Pew poll reported that 75%, 3 out of every 4 Pakistanis, view the United States as an enemy country. And their foreign minister, the Pakistani foreign minister, was asked, why do you think this is? And she said in one-word answer, drones. And it's easy to understand. These drones are killing people, thousands of people. Most of them we know are innocent. In fact, the reports show that only 2% of the people we've killed have been high-level al-Qaeda operatives. But I would contend that everybody that was killed was innocent because nobody was ever taken before any kind of judicial proceeding. So no evidence was presented against them, no charges were raised against them. So I think every person we've killed in Pakistan has been an innocent civilian. Now, this is a picture of a demonstration, and there are frequent anti-United States demonstrations. And I just wanted to draw the difference, though, and point out that the people were so gracious and warm to us, and they really understood the difference between American policies and the American people. And they just were so hospitable and, like I said, appreciative of us, while at the same time saying, why does your country do this? How can you get away with this? You know, what about international law? And U.S. influence is very powerful in Pakistan. Number one, we give them about $1.2 billion of economic aid every year, so there is a lot of pressure for them to acquiesce to the United States demands to use their airspace, to base troops there, and then these drones. So there's not a whole lot that the Pakistani government can do, even though the people we talked with, almost to a person, were adamantly against the drones. And we talked to politicians as well. And they said, no, they're against drones, but on the up front, you know, this is what they tell people, yes, we're against them, but then privately they submit to the U.S. pressure. A report released by Stanford and NYU universities called Living Under Drones. And this is a fairly long report. It's available at the website livingunderdrones.org. And it was based on over 100 first-hand personal interviews with drone victims, and got their first-hand accounts of what happened to them in their homes, their families that were killed, the damage that happened to them, and what their life was like after the drones, with the drones being present all the time. This report was also done in combination with an organization called the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, which is the most reliable source for reliable statistics on how many people have been killed and who they are by these drones. And then the Foundation for Fundamental Rights, or FFR, as I mentioned.
When we interviewed psychiatrists and psychologists who had treated people with these symptoms, they said that a number of people displayed very serious symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD.
We may not have declared war on Pakistan, but for the people living in northwest Pakistan under drones, they're in a war zone. One of the things we found and documented were incidents of double tapping.
There'll be an initial strike on a target, and then very shortly after, a secondary strike. What has happened in the period between the first and the second strike is that neighbors or people nearby or family members, or in some cases doctors, have come to assist those who may have been injured and still survived.
And when they're doing that, a second drone has hit. The people with whom we spoke in the communities affected, almost without exception, told us, when there's a drone strike, we won't go near afterwards.
It has made people extremely angry at the United States.
The New York Times recently classified drones in a piece as the new Guantanamo, the new recruiting tool for Al-Qaeda.
George Bush first started using drones. He called them surgical strikes, and he said that they were used as a last resort to attack high-level named Al-Qaeda operatives. And then it has sort of morphed over the years, and now President Obama uses them, what he calls signature strikes. If the people look or dress or behave as if they were a member of the Taliban, meaning they're walking around with a gun or they're wearing the tribal dress, then the President Obama deems that they are militants. And in fact, and this is why the death toll that the United States comes up with is so different from the truth, is because they count every military-aged male as a militant, and unless proven otherwise, posthumously. And this is American policy. So one of the problems about the strikes, I mean, it makes you wonder, how does the CIA know who to strike when we don't have boots on the ground? We're not getting a lot of intelligence. Well, the CIA pays people, they pay informants to place GPS chips, they call them. I've not actually seen one, but I imagine they're fairly small devices. And they are placed on cars, in homes, and this is how a lot of the targeting is done, through these GPS chips. So then this is creating a lot of divisiveness, suspicion between communities, wondering, well, if this compound, this house was hit, then who placed it and why, and maybe that there was some kind of vengeful action, there's a lot of personal things that go along with that. Most of the time, however, we don't say who we have killed because we don't know who we've killed. But we just say militant because that covers everything. And you think about that term militant, what does that really mean? Now, all these terms here, they're almost used interchangeably by the press, by the government. A combatant, terrorist, extremist, Islamist. And we have to really think about that. Now, if in Iowa there were drones flying overhead, dropping hellfire missiles on you while you were going about your business, would you not become a militant? Would you not try to fight back? Would you not be opposed to that? Here's pictures of several different headlines, actual headlines, and we always claim to kill militants. Now, this isn't just unique to the United States. In Pakistan as well, we are told that, Shahzad told us that on the news, a crawl will go along the bottom of the television screen that will say, drone attack in North Waziristan, 8 militants killed. And they don't tell the Pakistani people the genders or the ages or the names of these people because nobody knows. But they don't want the Pakistani people to know that 8 children were killed or 2 women were killed or an old man was killed. Not a lot of medical facilities. There are a few paved roads. There's no ambulance that comes. There's no 911 to call. If you survive the drone attack, it's very unlikely you're going to be able to receive adequate medical care. Of course, there's no compensation if your home is damaged or demolished, destroyed. There's nobody that's going to pay you to rebuild it. If the breadwinner of the family is killed and leaves orphans, there's no one to take care of those children. And there's no recourse for these people who are being harmed. They bury their dead very quickly after an attack happens. Most people who are killed are not, you can't even photograph it because it's just body parts. It's just, what they call it, bug splat. This is a picture, this one really gets to me. This is a man holding up a shard of his wife's clothing, which was all that was left of her when he came home. And he found this piece of red dress in a tree. And here's this man trying to document his wife's life by holding up a piece of her clothing, and this is all he has to be able to prove that she even existed. And our government doesn't recognize this. Our government denies these people have been killed. I'm going to talk a little bit later about our interaction with the American government. Here's some pictures of children who, the upper left is a picture of 3 orphans whose parents were killed. They're holding pieces of the rubble. And Noor said that they just never let them go. They just walk around with these pieces of rubble all the time.
My government is causing the deaths of hundreds of children in Pakistan, and our drone program is escalating so fast, and I'm really worried about how many other children in other countries are going to be killed by it. So I feel a strong responsibility, and I embrace the people of Pakistan in standing in defiance against the United States government.
Muhammad Anwar lost 4 sons and a brother in a drone attack 3 years ago. The drone struck during a funeral procession. Anwar is from South Waziristan, Pakistan, a former Taliban stronghold. He doubts that the attention to drones brought by this demonstration will last, but he came to the protest anyway.
There are several different documents or governing bodies that make the drone program illegal. Then the first one and the most basic concept is the UN Charter that says that we will not attack other countries in an aggressive way, that military force is only to be used in defense. The Geneva Conventions. The Geneva Conventions talk about how you treat other people, how you treat prisoners, how you treat wounded. It talks about not attacking first responders. It talks about giving, making sure you have positive identification of an enemy before you attack that person. Escalation of force and gradation of force. So that's another thing. And then, of course, the U.S. Constitution, which says that, you know, Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution says that our treaties that we make are binding. They are the supreme law. And it also says that the president has to have the approval of Congress before he attacks another country. And so not only are we killing people in a country that we are allies with, but we're doing it through a civilian agency, the CIA. There's just so many things wrong with this whole process. There's so many things wrong. But the bottom line is that that these drone strikes are essentially murder. They are extrajudicial assassinations, and they are wholly illegal. There's a lot of things that you can do, and I tell you, it seems like since I came back from Pakistan, almost every day I'm reading an article in Huffington Post or Truth Out or Common Dreams about drones. There's a lot of attention being paid now. The UN is doing an investigation. A lot of countries are speaking out against it. So this is really an issue that is not going away. I think it's going to be with us for a long time. Congress loves drones. There is a drone caucus in the House. It's been around for about 3 years. The Senate now has a brand new drones caucus. Congress loves drones. The President loves drones. CIA loves drones. So it's up to us. And I'm gratified to see so many people here to learn about it.